everyone. Welcome back. Today we're diving into leadership styles. Something I'm sure we're all interested in, whether we're leading a team now or hope to someday, or just trying to understand the dynamics at work a little bit better. We've got three great sources to help us out with this.
Yeah.
One that breaks down a bunch of different leadership styles and how to figure out your own. Another that looks at how leadership and management are connected and kind of how they're different.
Right.
And a third that explores how picking the wrong leadership style can really hurt your career.
Interesting. Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It can be.
Yeah.
So let's start with, the basics.
Sure.
What actually is leadership and how is it different from management? One of our sources, it's a PMI article called Leadership. When management is not enough, it draws this really important distinction between the two.
Right. Well, I mean, the core difference is that management is about getting consistent, predictable results,
Okay.
whereas leadership is about driving change. So think of it this way. Management is all about keeping the wheels turning smoothly.
I like that analogy.
Making sure that things get done efficiently, effectively.
Yeah, keep everything running like a well-oiled machine.
Exactly. But leadership, that's what provides the spark,
Okay.
the vision, the momentum to move in a new direction,
So it's about more than just hitting deadlines and staying on budget.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's actually where this PMI article gets really interesting. It brings up this surprising statistic.
Oh.
They found that almost all the senior executives they surveyed said they have too few people who are good at both leading and managing.
Wow. That's a big gap.
It is.
Is that something you've seen in your experience? That kind of disconnect between leadership and management skills?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's a pattern I've seen too.
Yeah.
And it really highlights why it's so important to understand these subtleties of different leadership styles.
Okay.
Because one style doesn't fit every situation.
Right. It's not one size fits all.
Exactly. Another one of our sources, this one from the Institute of Project Management, or IPM, they identify 10 common leadership styles.
10. That's a lot.
It is a lot.
I'm already feeling a little overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's all right. We don't have to memorize them all right now.
Okay, good.
The key takeaway here is just that there is no single best style.
Right.
It all depends. It depends on the situation, the team, and, how self-aware the leader is.
Okay, yeah.
And what's really fascinating is that this article also emphasizes that a leader's style can actually evolve over time.
Interesting. So it's not like you're stuck with one style forever.
Nope, not at all.
That's good. That's encouraging. Means we can all learn and grow as leaders.
Exactly.
To help us understand these different styles a little better, do you think we could dive into a few specific ones, maybe using those real-world examples from Cindy Margulies' article, Styles of Leadership, How to Avoid Leisure Suits, High Waters, and Other Career-Ending Mistakes?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so for example, how does a visionary leader, how do they effectively inspire their team? How do they actually sell that vision?
That's a great question. I mean,
Sure.
having a great vision, that's only half the battle.
Right, so it's not enough to just have a good idea.
You've got to know how to communicate it in a way that gets people on board, gets them excited about it. Margulies gives this perfect example
Okay.
about the creation of a PMO charter.
Yeah.
Essentially, this document that outlines the goals and purpose of a project management office.
Right, the PMO.
And instead of just saying, here's the charter, this leader, they took this more collaborative approach.
Okay.
They interviewed stakeholders at all levels,
Yes.
input from the team, really focused on building buy-in from everyone.
So it's about involving everybody in the process, not just telling them what the vision is.
Exactly. Make them
Yeah.
feel like they're part of shaping that vision.
Yeah.
And that led to a really clear, well-defined charter that everyone felt invested in.
That makes a lot of sense. It reminds me of what the IPM article talked about, aligning individual efforts with the bigger picture.
Oh, absolutely.
People are way more motivated when they see how their work fits into the overall goals.
It's about connecting the dots for people,
Yeah?
showing them the why behind the work.
Okay, that makes sense. So what about participative leadership? How does that work in practice?
Well, Margulies has this great story about a senior program manager.
Okay.
He was brought in to rescue this failing project. It was already projected to be 7 months behind schedule.
Ooh, that's rough.
It was not good.
What did he do?
His first move was to gather all the project leadership and the key people working on it
Okay.
and spend 2 weeks replanning the whole thing.
2 weeks. I bet the company executives were not thrilled about that.
You're right, they were not happy.
Yeah.
But this program manager, He knew how important it was to get everybody on the same page.
Okay, yeah.
So he really listened to their concerns. He challenged them to work smarter, empower them to own the solution. Instead of just giving orders, he created this space for collaboration and problem solving.
And I'm guessing that shift in approach made a big difference.
Oh, it totally did.
Okay.
By using this like really participative approach, he was able to motivate the team, give them a sense of shared responsibility, and they actually ended up delivering the project on time.
Wow. That's a pretty powerful example of how participative leadership can work.
It is.
It seems like emotional intelligence plays a big role in that style too. Like what we were talking about with that greatest leadership article.
Yeah, you're right. Emotional intelligence is key here,
Hmm.
especially when it comes to things like teamwork, conflict management, influence. It's about being aware of your own emotions,
Yeah.
and those are the people on your team, and using that awareness to navigate relationships in a healthy way.
So we've seen how visionary and participative leadership can be effective,
Right.
but what about some of those less desirable styles?
Right.
Like Margulies talks about leisure suit leadership. What does that even mean?
Oh, the leisure suit leadership style.
Yeah.
That's like a prime example of what not to do.
Okay, good to know.
It's basically pace-setting leadership, but taken to like the extreme.
Oh, okay.
These leaders are so fixated on doing things better and faster,
Got it.
and they expect everyone else to keep up with their, frantic pace.
I mean, that sounds exhausting.
It can be incredibly exhausting. And the problem is, this style, when it's done poorly, it just creates this like toxic environment.
Yeah.
Team members feel pushed too hard, micromanaged, undervalued. Morale plummets because they don't feel like the leader genuinely cares about them.
It's like being on a treadmill that just keeps speeding up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the worst part is, these pace-setting leaders, they often don't realize they're doing it.
Oh, wow.
They think they're coaching,
Right.
but really they're just dictating and controlling.
So it sounds like self-awareness is a key ingredient for any leader, no matter what their style is.
Yeah, for sure. You need to be able to look at your own approach and ask yourself, is this helping the team, or is this just feeding my ego?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's starting to make sense why choosing the wrong leadership style can really hurt your career.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, what about that high waters style Margulies mentioned?
Well, yes, the high waters.
Yeah.
This one's all about directive leadership,
Okay.
where the leader basically just tells people what to do
Mm-hmm.
and expects them to do it right away, no questions asked. It's a very top-down approach.
So kind of like a drill sergeant?
Yeah, kind of. And while there are times when that style is necessary, like in a crisis or if there's a serious performance issue,
Mm-hmm.
if that's your only approach, it can be really harmful in the long run.
Yeah, I imagine it would make people feel like they're just cogs in a machine.
Exactly. No autonomy, no input. And when the directive style is overused, it just makes people feel used.
Yeah.
Insignificant. Which leads to low morale, low productivity.
Yeah.
Margulies gives this example of a project manager who leaned heavily on this style.
Okay.
And the project failed miserably. He blamed the team, but really it was his leadership that created this toxic environment.
Oof. That's a tough lesson to learn, but an important one.
It is.
So it sounds like the takeaway here is that you have to be really careful about how you use the directive style.
Yeah.
If you use it too much or in the wrong situations, it can do more harm than good.
You've got to strike that balance, adapt your approach to the team and the situation.
Okay, so we've talked about the difference between leadership and management. We've looked at a few different leadership styles, and we've seen how important it is to pick the right approach. What stands out to you so far?
Yeah.
Anything resonate with your own experiences?
What's really striking me is just how intertwined leadership is with emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
The examples that Cindy Markle shares, they really bring that point home. It's clear that understanding, responding to the human element, that's crucial.
Yeah.
Whether it's the affiliative leader who fosters connections through something as simple as, sharing photos with the team, or the participative leader who really takes the time to listen to the team's concerns.
Right. It's like that saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
That feels especially relevant in leadership. Like, you can't just, bark orders or set unrealistic expectations and expect people to just follow you willingly.
Yeah.
There needs to be that human connection.
Absolutely. And that kind of brings us to cultural awareness, which is something else Margulies highlights in her article.
Okay.
She talks about how leadership styles that work well in one culture might completely flop in another.
Oh, yeah.
She has this great anecdote about a process rollout in Hong Kong
Okay.
where these cultural misunderstandings almost like derailed the entire project.
I can relate to that. I had this boss once who was very direct, almost blunt in his communication style.
Mm.
It worked okay with our US-based team, but it caused a lot of friction with our colleagues in Asia
Yeah.
who were used to a more subtle, indirect approach.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that effective leadership, it's not just about having a set of skills.
Right.
It's also about being adaptable,
Yeah.
being sensitive to those nuances of different cultures and communication styles.
Yeah.
What works for one person or team might not work for another. And a truly effective leader, they can recognize those differences and adjust.
For sure. So let's maybe shift gears a bit and talk about how we can figure out our own leadership style.
Okay.
The IPM article offers some steps for self-discovery.
Yeah. It starts with defining your vision. Like, what do you want to achieve as a leader?
Yeah.
What kind of impact do you want to have on your team and the organization?
Right. So it's about having a clear sense of purpose,
Yeah.
knowing what you stand for, what you want to accomplish.
Exactly. And once you have that vision, it's about understanding your natural inclinations, your preferences. Do you tend to be more collaborative or more directive?
Right.
Are you more focused on tasks or on people? The IPM article suggests reflecting on past experiences, figuring out your strengths and weaknesses, even experimenting with different approaches and seeing what feels most authentic to you, and the most effective.
I love that they encourage experimentation.
Yeah.
It's like giving yourself permission to try different things and see what works best for you and your team.
Exactly. And don't forget about feedback.
Oh, right.
Asking your team for honest feedback on your leadership style, that can be so valuable.
Yeah.
Even if it's, a little scary.
It can definitely be a little humbling, but ultimately, it's how you grow.
It is. So we've talked about the different leadership styles, the importance of emotional intelligence, and how to start figuring out your own style. But there's this other article we haven't really touched on yet, the greatest leadership article I've ever read by Kevin Kruse.
It brings up this really powerful idea about inclusive leadership.
Yeah, that article's full of great insights. What specifically stood out to you?
Well, Cruz tells this story about a Navy commander
Okay.
who has this really unique visual reminder
Okay.
of the diversity within his squadron. He has a map on his wall with push pins representing the hometowns of all his team members.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. That was such a powerful image.
It was.
It really made inclusion so tangible, so personal.
Exactly. It wasn't just like a list of values on the wall.
Right.
It was this constant and visual reminder that diversity is a strength,
Yeah?
not a weakness.
Yeah.
He even talked about how those differences, they could be like weaponized
Real.
to the team's advantage.
I love that reframing diversity as a force multiplier.
Yeah.
Instead of seeing differences as obstacles, we can learn to harness them, Create a team that's truly greater than the sum of its parts. It's a really powerful message for any leader. And what really resonated with me from that article is this idea that inclusive leadership, it's a skill that can be learned and developed. This commander, he wasn't always an inclusive leader. It was through his experiences, personal and professional, that he developed that awareness and commitment to creating a more inclusive environment.
That's so encouraging for, anyone who maybe doesn't feel like they're a natural leader.
Yeah.
Means we can all grow and evolve and become more effective leaders by being open to learning,
Right.
seeking feedback, challenging our own assumptions.
Absolutely. It's a continuous journey. There's always more to learn, more to discover about ourselves and how we can best lead others.
So before we wrap up this deep dive into leadership,
Right.
I want to leave you with a thought-provoking question. It's inspired by Jack Curtis, that Navy commander in Cruse's article. He talked about that map with the push pins,
Yeah.
representing the hometowns of everyone in his squadron.
Right.
Imagine you have a similar map, but instead of hometowns, the push pins represent the people you lead
Okay.
or the people you interact with on a regular basis. What does that map tell you about the diversity of perspectives and experiences around you?
That's a really powerful question.
Yeah.
I'm picturing my own map right now,
Yeah.
and it really makes you think about all the different backgrounds, experiences,
Yeah.
ways of thinking, that are all around us.
It really highlights the richness, the variety, like the human tapestry, doesn't it?
It does.
And it leads to another question, like how can we use those differences as strengths?
Right.
How can we create environments where everyone feels valued, respected, empowered to, you know, to contribute their unique talents and perspective?
Yeah, I mean, that's the challenge
Yeah,
and the opportunity of leadership, right?
right.
Instead of seeing diversity as something to like manage or overcome, we need to embrace it
Yeah.
as a source of innovation, creativity, problem solving.
It's about shifting our mindset from, diversity as a box to check to diversity as a strategic advantage.
100%.
Yeah.
And that shift, it requires us to be intentional
Yeah.
about creating a culture of inclusion
Right.
where different voices are not just heard,
Yeah.
but they're actively, sought out
Yeah.
and valued.
So for everyone listening, we challenge you to create your own kind of metaphorical map.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a literal map. It could be a list. It could be a diagram, or even just a mental image. But take some time to think about the people you work with, the people you lead, the people you interact with every day.
Uh-huh.
What makes them unique? What are their strengths, their experiences, their perspectives?
And then the most important step
Yeah.
is to think about how you can create an environment
Yeah.
where those differences are not just tolerated,
You're right.
but celebrated.
An environment where everyone feels safe to speak up, share their ideas, challenge the status quo.
Because that's where the real magic happens.
Yeah.
When we create that culture of inclusion,
Yeah.
we unlock this whole other level of creativity, innovation, problem solving.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
They have.
We explored the difference between leadership and management. We dove into a bunch of different leadership styles, and we talked about the importance of emotional intelligence, cultural awareness, and inclusive leadership.
It's been a great conversation.
It really has. And remember, leadership, it's not just about a title or a position.
Right.
It's a skill set. It's a way of being
Yeah.
that we can all, cultivate and refine over time.
Exactly.
So keep learning, keep experimenting.
Right.
Keep pushing yourselves to be the best leaders you can be.
Yeah, absolutely.
And until next time, happy leading.
Happy leading.